What's going on, everybody? Got another episode for you. This time on, well, with 99% more lighting than the last last video. I forgot to turn on the garage light overhead here. But anyway, we are looking at the same situation, in my opinion. Now, I could be 100% wrong about this, but I don't know, man. We'll see. This time's a little different. Not necessarily different, but there are other factors that we need to take into account, because we left the WHO, the World Health Organization, because it's a useless entity that has never helped in any kind of pandemic. They're just useless. There's no other way to describe this organization other than useless puppets of China. So, knowing all that, I want to go ahead and take a look at this. This is back in March 25th. New. What began as a routine check triggered by a persistent odor led to an unsettling discovery. A hidden lab operating inside a California warehouse containing dangerous pathogens, including HIV, malaria, COVID-19, and Ebola. Now, you may or may not remember, they caught the same guy that was caught in California a few years back, was caught yet again. Somehow he got released for running a dirty lab like this within our borders under Biden, and he was just caught in Las Vegas running the same type of lab. So keep that in mind as we move through this, because people were wondering during COVID how exactly, people that paid attention rather, how exactly it got over here, right? So a lot of the media didn't report the fact that within the beginning of January, early days of January 2020, I think it was when it started, we were hearing about it in China in late 2019. But by the beginning of the following year that we started hearing about it in China, the Trump administration had begun checkpoints in airports to check for people who are traveling from or had traveled to and from China, indirectly, directly, whatever, as part of their travels. They would have checkpoints where they would check to make sure these people are okay. Well, you know, the media never reported on that, so it made it seem like the Trump administration was doing zero about any of it, which was the furthest thing from the truth to those of us who paid attention. Now, having said all that, we need to pay attention to what's going on in Africa right now, of course, because, like I said, we left the WHO, and this is where we are with that. Ebola outbreak caused by rare strain with no vaccine, warn experts, as cases pass 900 and first Red Cross volunteers die from the virus. Now, I'm just going to point out to you that every time you see these photos of the volunteers or the workers, their suits are less than desirable, let's put it that way. We'll just start with that little bit of truth. So take a look at this. Here's an article from Daily Mail. Ebola outbreak caused by rare strain with no vaccine, warn experts as cases pass 900. First Red Cross volunteers die from virus. A deadly and little understood strain of Ebola is spreading rapidly across Central Africa with no protective vaccine in sight, sparking fears of major worldwide health crisis. Officials have upgraded the public health risk of the outbreak from high to very high, with the virus now detected in Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. It says, whoops, don't want to get too far above. It says more than 900 suspected cases and 119 deaths have been reported in DRC, including 3 Red Cross volunteers who are thought to have contracted the virus while managing dead bodies. All flights to and from Bunia, the eastern DRC city where most cases and deaths have occurred, have been grounded, but experts believe the virus may have already spread to other nearby nations, such as South Sudan. In previous Ebola outbreaks, the virus has killed more than half of those infected, many of whom died due to internal bleeding and organ failure. Now, experts are warning that there is no vaccine that can protect against the Ebola variant driving the outbreak, which means the virus will almost certainly continue to spread and kill. A life-saving jab already exists to protect against the most common form of Ebola, the Zaire variant. However, the current outbreak has been caused by a different strain called Bundabuigoyo, the Ooga Booga one. So, right here, it says scientists at Oxford University are racing to develop a Ooga Booga vaccine, but warn that it will take 2 or 3 months before the jab can be tested on humans, meaning it is unlikely patients in Africa will get the drug within the next 6 months. A successful vaccine would likely protect patients from severe illness, death, as well as limit the spread of the virus. However, there is also no guarantee that the experimental jab will be effective. Experts say that the Ooga Booga isn't new, but it is rare. The variant, which first recorded in 2007 and takes its name from the area of western Uganda where it was spotted, it then arose for a second time in the DRC in 2012. However, both outbreaks were limited in size, with just over 200 combined confirmed cases and probable cases around 66 deaths. So out of 200 combined confirmed cases and probable cases, which means we're not sure, probably, there were 66 deaths out of 200. Okay, that's less than half, but they said half. Anyway, the origin of the Ooga Booga variant is unknown, but some researchers believe it was passed on to human via fruit bats. Interesting, we're going with that narrative for this particular one, isn't it? It is thought to spread through direct contact with the blood or bodily fluids of a person who is sick or has died from the virus, or through contact with contaminated surfaces. So, blood or bodily fluids, someone who's sick or died from the virus, or obviously through contact with contaminated surfaces. We got to put that one on there because they're not really sure. It is thought to spread, they say, not it is proven to spread. We're leaving how it spreads open just to go with this narrative. Symptoms remain the same across all Ebola variants, starting with flu-like fever, headache, muscle pain, vomiting, and diarrhea, before progressing to internal bleeding, organ failure, and death. However, patients can carry the virus up to 21 days before symptoms begin, which is when experts believe they will become infectious. While the WHO escalated its risk assessment for the DRC, it claims risk at the global level remains low. Buried in the article, remains low. The UK has announced up to 20 million to help contain the outbreak of Ebola in the eastern region of DRC. Not a lot of money to contain a virus, but I'm glad to see that the EU, or the UK rather, had stepped up, since they're the ones importing these people into their country to rape and pillage at the super high numbers, to where they're about to lose power because the people are going to vote against them, and have. UK health officials have also activated a returning workers scheme where healthcare workers returning from Ebola outbreak regions are monitored for signs of the disease once back in UK. Monitored. Now, like, are they monitored in a facility, or are they monitored in their homes and able to go about their daily routine? That's what I'm wondering, because it doesn't say. However, experts have warned what the UK is unprepared for, that the UK is unprepared for the Ebola outbreak, and argue that population may be at risk. Well, I don't know why that would be. Would it be because of some choices we've made on immigration and illegal immigration and refugees and crap like that? It was just a thought. Dr. Derek Sloan, an expert in infectious diseases at St. Andrews University, said the recent outbreak shows we must remain vigilant and preserve funding. Sounds good to me, UK. Keep doing it. This outbreak, along with the recent Hana virus cases on a cruise ship and meningitis infections in the UK, show how important it is to stay vigilant and use effective public health tools to protect our populations, Dr. Sloan, also a spokesperson for UK Med and Healthy World Secure Britain, said. Infectious disease outbreaks such as these in our interconnected world cannot be dismissed as someone else's problem. Yeah, no, they can. These are examples of how important it is to maintain this expertise and underline the need to preserve global health aid. So that's the end of that article there. Now, the other news would be that we are looking at basically Trump is doing the same thing at airports as he's done for COVID. Okay. So they took decisive action on this threat. They have quickly started ramping up enhanced screening at major U.S. airports to stop Ebola from reaching American soil. Travelers from high-risk African countries, for example, like the Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't know why they call it. Well, I guess I do know why they call it democratic. Let's be real. It's how it's supposed to be when you're in. Anyway, Uganda and South Sudan, they are now going to enter through designated airports, which would be Dulles, Atlanta, and Houston. And then they're going to be taken in for health checks. It's pretty smart and proactive, but you're not really hearing the media talk about it. So basically what the targeted screening will do, it'll start in late May, which is right now. U.S. citizens and permanent residents returning back from these countries are going to get funneled into Washington, Dulles, Atlanta, Hartsfield, Jackson, and Houston Bush Intercontinental for like temperature checks, questionnaires, monitoring. JFK is expected to be next. So it just goes with no open borders, free for all under Trump. You know, it's a real public health scrutiny, but the media is not going to cover it, even though they will fearmonger on this particular subject. So one last update, quarantine facility in Kenya shows kind of an America first approach. Beyond the airport screenings, the Trump administration is also setting up a state-of-the-art quarantine facility in Kenya for Americans exposed overseas. This keeps these potential cases kind of from getting into our borders while also containing this supposed outbreak at the source. Exactly what we need during times like this. And that is exactly how that should go down. Now, of course, he will get no credit for this. He will get no coverage for this. The smart, decisive leadership that he's making there to try to keep this out of our country, just like he did during COVID. Now, that brings me back to my other topic that I started with. We found a handful of these disgusting, dirty labs in our country. The one, for example, I think it would have been the one in, I think it was the one in Las Vegas where, you know, the anti-Jew people were like, oh, Jewish guy allows or runs this particular facility, whatever. And it wasn't the case at all. It was a Chinese national that was running it. And the landlord, who had no clue about it, was Jewish. But we got to frame it a certain way to get people riled up and ignoring the actual reality of it. Now, who do you think pushed that particular, knowing that's a popular topic in a small subset of Americans right now, to blame literally everything wrong in their lives, everything that goes wrong in the United States, everything that goes wrong in the world ever on Jews, which, don't get me wrong, I do not like Israel whatsoever. But Israel is not China, and it was a Chinese national that was running it. The landlord happened to be Jewish, right? But because the landlord's Jewish, somehow we got to tie that into all this. Do you see where I'm going with this? But at the end of the day, we are doing what we can to keep it from coming into the country, but are we finding these labs fast enough? Because if there's that many, there's probably who knows how thousands more. Right? China's been working within our borders for a very long time. There could be some in New York. There could be some in Florida. There could be some in Arizona. I mean, they could be all over the United States. And all it would take is for one of these labs to intentionally leak whatever the narrative of choice is for whatever virus outbreak there is. Now, I'm not here to be, retard Alex Jones and try to spread panic and fear. I am here to tell you that you saw what their particular, I guess, guesstimation of what would get you caught up in Ebola, right? So what I'm telling you is carry hand sanitizer. right? Just do it. Just get hand sanitizer. If you're like me and you have to leave the house at least once a day, maybe you get lunch somewhere, you go out, you grab your lunch, you're at the counter, you're paying, you're touching things. Before you touch your food, use your hand sanitizer. It's that simple. Now, I would normally not buy in to these types of things and tell anybody to go do that because that's like, following by their rules. But at the same time, why risk it? There's a reason that they quickly switched from the hantavirus or the hantavirus, whatever, to this, right? Because Ebola is much more scary. And we already had an example of at least 1 or 2 labs in recent history get busted with that exact virus or a version of it. So you need to keep that in mind. Just take safety precautions. Don't get bodily. Do your best. If you live in LA or some other blue city, you might end up in contact with a homeless person's bodily fluids or junkies or whatever. But just do your best to just not touch them or get bodily fluids on you. Use hand sanitizer for surfaces after you touch surfaces. This is common sense stuff, guys. So end of the day, I'm not going to fearmonger on this. I'm not going to spread panic. Hand sanitizer. I make my own. I would tell you how, but you'd probably laugh. So at the end of the day, guys, I think we're going to be okay. Trump administration is handling this along with Iran, along with midterms, along with everything domestic, bringing in jobs, bringing in drug manufacturing, bringing in automotive manufacturing. And yet all we hear is black pills from the panicans and the retards. And I frankly am done with anybody that wants to accept any of that nonsense from any of those people. Anyway, guys, until next time, you be safe out there. Take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. Please give me a like if you watch to the end, especially, and maybe consider giving me a follow or a subscribe. I will try to keep doing these all summer from my garage in between getting stuff done in the yard. Peace out.